Hello everyone and welcome back. Today I'm going to show you how to create this Pomodoro Timer app with React.js. Okay, let's start by creating our app. So npx create React app Pomodoro Timer. Okay, now let's start our app. Yarn start. Now let's go to app.js. Now let's remove all the stuff because we don't need it. Let's leave an empty div. We don't need this logo either. Let's put test here to see if yes, it works. Maybe let's replace the div with main. Now let's put some basic styling. So I'll put back this test and I will go back to app.js and I will remove all of this. And now let's start with the body. Let's do this application dark. So background color will be, let's do 38 for B like this. Now it's dark and the main color will be now the test is whitish. Now let's maybe add some padding to the main element. Padding, let's do padding top 50 pixels like this, and max width of 340 pixels and margin 0 auto, like this. And let's do text align center. Okay, now let's go back to our app.js. We'll have two screens or two pages in this project. The first will be the timer and the second will be settings page or screen. So I will create components for each of those. So the first will be timer. So let's do new file, timer.js alongside with our app.js file. Now let's do function timer and it will just return a div with timer, and let's do export default timer. All right, now let's use this in our app.js. So here let's do timer like this, and as you can see it has been imported for me. So now we have this timer here. Okay, now to get circle progress bar, I will search for it here. So React circular progress bar like this, and here it is. So I will install it with yarn add and this React circular progress bar. And now let's see how to use it. So we can just grab those two. Let's go to our timer and on the top let's add those two. And I think we will also need to build styles. So let's also add build styles. Okay, now let's remove this timer and let's put this progress bar instead. We don't have percentage, but let's say it's 60%, and here also 60%. And let's see how it looks like. It looks really nice. First, let's define colors we want. So first, red will be this one. I have already prepared colors. And then the green will be const green will be this one. So now we can change it to our colors. Let's see. Let's put styles here, and in here we'll use build styles, and text color will be white. Path color will be Let's say for now it will be red, and the trail color will be gray. So let's do 255, 255, 255, and 0.2, like this. Okay, now let's add the play and pause buttons. So let's create a separate div for this, and let's go to hero icons, and let's search for play. Here we have it. I think I will create a separate component for each of those. So new file, play button.js, and here function play button will return a button like this, and it will pass all the props like this, and inside the button we'll have this SVG, and here we will need to export default play button like this, and let's try to use it in our timer. Play button like this. Oops, it didn't import it. Play button like this. Now let's see. Well, it doesn't work yet. Let's go to our apps CSS, and let's add some basic styles for our buttons. So background color will be transparent, and color will be almost white. So let's do RGBA 255 and 0.8. No border, at least for now. Display will be inline block. Width will be 100%. Okay, now we have a button. Let's change it to 100 pixels, like this. All right, now let's go back to our timer, and let's add some spacing here. So margin top, let's do 20 pixels. All right, now let's also add the pause button. So let's see, pause, copy JSX. All right, and now a new file, pause button.js, function pause button, return button, and we want to pass all the props like this, and inside the button we'll put this SVG, and here we'll export default pause button. Now let's try to show it as well. Pause button, and it works. Now we will also need a settings button here. So let's maybe create another div like this, and also style margin top of 20 pixels will be fine. And here inside let's find icon cog. Yes, this will work. Let's create a new component for this as well. New file, settings button.js. So let's do function settings button, and it will return a button with all the past props, and this SVG, and let's also add settings as a text, and export default settings button. Let's try to put it here. Settings button. Yeah, although those have been imported for me, so if it doesn't do it for you, you need to add those lines here. Let's see. Yeah, we have settings button, but let's make it a little prettier. So let's add a class name, settings, to the button, and now let's go back to styles, button settings, or maybe let's call it with label, or with text. So width will be auto, and now let's add some background color, maybe light white. So let's do 0.1 like this, and let's replace it here with text. So we will have some preview here. All right, back to app CSS. Now let's add border radius of maybe 10 pixels. Okay, now some padding, 10 pixels from the top and the bottom, 20 pixels from the sides. Cool. Bigger font, let's do font size 1.4 rem, and let's do line height of 36 pixels. Right, now let's fix the icon so it's on the left side. So button with text and SVG inside. Let's do with 36 pixels. Float left, and let's maybe add some margin on the right side. So margin right will be 5 pixels. All right, so now we have those two buttons. We have settings button and we have timer that doesn't work. Okay, let's first fix so this settings button will work, because for now it doesn't do anything. And let's also add some cursor pointer to the buttons. So we have this hand. All right, so let's go back to app.js and let's see. We want to also have a settings page or settings screen. So let's do this. New file, and let's call this one settings.js. And it will be function settings, and let's say it will return an empty div for now, or let's say settings, and export default settings as always. Right, now back to app.js. Let's try to show the settings. So settings. Okay, so we have this settings here. But we don't want to show both timer and settings. So now let's use state to hide one of those. So let's import use state, and let's define const show settings and set show settings will be use state, and the default value will be false. Right, and now we can do something like this. If show settings is true, then we will show the settings. Otherwise, we will show the timer. So now the show settings is false because it has the default value. So this one is false. So we are not showing the settings, but we are showing the timer. If I change it to true, we are showing only the settings. Okay, now let's fix the settings page. So I'll go back to settings, And I will maybe do style. Let's do text align to left. Okay. Okay, so now we'll have two settings. Let's do labels for those, and the first will be work minutes and the second will be break minutes. And let's fix some styling. Label will be display block. And now we need to add some sliders here. So let's do yarn add React slider. And now we can add those here. So let's import React slider from React slider like this. And let's add first React slider here and some styles so we can some classes so we can style it. Class name will be slider, and then we also need to have thumb. Class name will be thumb. Track class name will be track. Let's say that value will be 45 minutes as a default for now. Minimum will be 1 and the maximum will be 120, so 2 hours. Okay, now let's add some styles to our sliders so it will actually work. So new file, slider.css. Now let's do slider. We'll have height of 40 pixels. And let's do border of 2 pixels, solid. And now we need this red color. So how to do this? Let's do red for now. And let's do border radius of maybe 20 pixels. And now let's try to import the styles here. So import slider CSS. Now it almost works. We just need to fix the handle. So handle will have background color of red and cursor will be pointer, and width will be 40 pixels and height will be also 40 pixels. And let's do, oh, not background image, background color. This should be thumb. Okay, now we have this one and it kind of works. Now let's just do border radius 20 pixels. Yeah, now it looks nicer. But one thing I want to fix is to use our red color. So if I go back to app CSS, let's define our colors. So root, and I will put our colors here. So red will be this one, and green will be this one. Now in our slider CSS we can do var red. Okay, now it's brighter red here. Same needs to go here. Var red like this. Yeah, now it looks better. Now we also want to have second slider. So let's go back to settings and let's copy this one here. Now we have 2 sliders. Let's add another class here. Let's call this one green. So in our slider CSS we can do slider green. We'll have border color of green and also thumb. So slider green thumb will have background color green, like this. Now let's add some spacing here. So let's go back to app CSS and to the label. Let's add some margin bottom of, let's say, 10 pixels and margin top of, let's say, 20 pixels. And let's do also text transform capitalize. So now to save and use those settings values here, we will create a context for our app. So back to app.js, and here we'll use some context. So let's create new component or new file, and let's call it settings context.js. Let's import React from React, and let's do const settings context will be React create context, and the default will be an empty object. And now let's do export default settings context. Now back to our app.js. Let's use our settings context here. So let's do settings context dot provider. The value for now will be empty object, and let's put everything here. Okay, so we want to provide work minutes. What will be 25 or maybe 45 as a default, and break minutes, let's say 15 as a default. And now let's try to use it inside our settings component. So here we will need to use context, and let's import our settings context. Settings context like this. And we also need to add missing use context from React, and let's call our context settings info. Okay, so now inside settings info we should have current settings. So let's try here, React slider. So the first one will be actually settings info work minutes, and the second will be settings info break minutes. Okay, let's also put those values next to the labels like this. Break minutes 15. Let's add like this. And we also want to have work minutes next to its label like this. And let's maybe remove minutes from here and minutes from here. Let's add those. Yeah, so now we can almost change those. So now we need to add on change. So let's do on change, and on change will have a new value. But to set this, we will use also settings context. So let's do settings info, but we don't have any method to set it. So I will comment this for now. Let's go back to app.js, and let's define it also here as our state. So let's do const work minutes set work minutes will be use state, and let's say 45 minutes will be default. Now let's also do this for break minutes. Set break minutes, default will be 15 minutes. Now we can use state here instead of values. So I can do work minutes here. But if we have same names as the variable, I can just remove this. So let's do like this and like this. Okay, it still works. Now I can also use this settings. So we can set the new value. So we can set the new values. So let's do set work minutes, and let's also pass set break minutes like this. So now we can use those two both in settings and in timer. We can use actually all those 4 variables. So let's go to settings, and on change we will do settings info that set work minutes to new value, and we will do the same for the break minutes, but here we'll do set break minutes. Now let's see if it works. Yeah, it works. Let's refresh. So it's default, yes, but it's showing settings all the time. We need a back button here. So inside our settings component, let's go back down here and let's add a new button. So let's create a new component for this. New file, back button.js. Here function back button like this, and it will return a button with all the props passed to it. Now let's also add a class name with text, and let's add some icon. Arrow left will be cool, so I will copy this one. Let's also add back as a text, and now export default back button, and now we can use it inside our settings. So back button, oops, back button. Now it has been imported for me. Let's refresh. Yeah, now we have it. Let's maybe put it in a separate div, and some quick styles will be to make text align center and the margin top of, let's say, 20 pixels. Okay, now when someone clicks on this back button, I want to go back to timer. So first let's put back the default value of show settings to false. So now we see only the timer, those buttons and settings button. So let's fix this settings button. So when someone clicks on a settings button, which is inside our timer, we want to change show settings to true using set show settings. So we need to pass those two into our settings context. So let's do show settings and set show settings. So we can use those two inside our settings and timer. Now let's go to timer. Here we have the button. Let's add on click, and we will do, we need to use a context here. So let's import use context from React, and let's define settings info will be use context, and here our context is settings context, and let's import it here. Import settings context. Okay, now it's important. So now we have settings info here. So we can do settings info set show settings to true. Okay, now when we click this button, we see the settings. But now let's fix the back button. Let's go back to settings.js. And this back button on click. Let's run settings info set show settings to false. So when I click on this one, I go back to the timer. So now let's fix our timer. So it will use the values from settings and it will not be percentage. And then we'll also fix those buttons here. So let's go back to our timer.js. Okay, first we want to know if it's paused or if it's running. So let's use state for this. Use state, and here let's const is paused and set is paused and use state. The default value will be true. So on the beginning it's paused. And now we have both play button and pause button. We can hide one of those. If it's paused, then we will show the play button. Otherwise, we'll show the pause button. Okay, so now we have only the play button because it's paused. Okay, now let's try to run this timer here. So let's say that it's not paused, so we can pause it. But now we want to change this every second. So to do this, we will use effect. And here we'll use effect. And we want to run it every time settings info changes. Okay, so every time this timer component is mounted, we want to start the timer. So let's first initiate all the settings. So let's maybe create a new function init timer that we can run here. When we initiate timer, we want to know how many seconds is left, or we want to set the default settings left from the settings. So when we initiate timer, we want to set how many minutes or seconds is left on the timer. So let's also add it to our state. So the seconds left and set seconds left will be use state. Default will be 0. But when we initiate our timer, let's do set seconds left will be settings info work minutes times 60. Okay, we also want to know what mode is it on our timer. If it's a working mode or is it break mode, what cycle it is. So if it's a work mode, we will do red and different timing. And if it's break, we'll show green and also different setting. Right, so let's do a const mode and set mode will be use state, and the default will be work, and those can be work, break, or pause, or maybe not pause, no. Okay, so after we initiate timer, we want to start it. So let's create interval, and to do this, let's do set interval. So every second we want to run a function here. So if it's paused, then we don't want to do anything. And if seconds left is 0, then we want to change the mode. So from work to break and from break to work. Let's do maybe a new function, switch mode. And in here, let's do function switch mode. And let's do next mode will be if the mode is work, then it will be break. Otherwise, it will be work. And we want to set mode to next mode. And we also want to set seconds left to if the next mode is work, then we will do settings info work minutes times 60. Otherwise, we'll do settings info break minutes times 60. But I will put it as a variable here. So let's do const next seconds with this, and we can get times 60 outside of those. So let's do like this and times 60 next seconds. All right, now if it's paused, we don't do anything. If seconds left is 0, we switch mode. But otherwise, let's do just also return here. Otherwise, if none of those, then we want to tick 1 second. So let's create a tick function tick. And from here, we want to remove 1 second from seconds left, or maybe set seconds left will be seconds left minus 1. But now the problem is that this will not work, because if we use state variables in intervals or timeouts, it will not work, because we need to use references instead. So I will add use ref. Otherwise, if I would not use references, we'll have the same variables that we have passed on the beginning. So this interval would run with is paused. For example, this would be false. And even if I would change it in state, then it will not be refreshed inside the interval function. Right, so I need to create references for all those variables. So let's go back to the top here, and let's use const second left reference will be use ref, and the default value will be seconds left. We need to do the same with is paused ref, and also with the mode. So mode ref, like this. And now in all those functions that are used by the interval, I need to use references. So is paused ref current, because it's reference, seconds left reference current, and also in switch mode and tick I need to also fix those. So inside the tick we need to update seconds left reference. So let's do seconds left reference current will be seconds left reference current -1. So I can do like this, or I can do just like this. And here we can actually use the seconds left reference current. Now let's also fix the switch mode function. So next mode will be mode ref current, and next seconds is fine, I guess. And let's set next mode from reference current. Oops, not like this, like this. And we also need to update reference. So it's the mode reference current equals, oops, it should be like this. It's a constant. Next mode and also seconds left. So seconds left reference current is next seconds. All right. So now when let's put an ID of this interval to constant. Let's do interval here, and let's return this interval. So when this component mounts, it will start the interval. When it is unmounted, it will clear interval, interval. Okay, so now it still doesn't work because we are not updating this 60% values here. So to do this, let's calculate everything. Okay, so first we want to know what is the percentage here. So let's do const percentage, and it's math rounds because we need to round the values. Seconds left of the how many seconds is in the total, and the total, let's call it total seconds, and let's define it here. Total seconds is inside our settings info. So if mode is work, then we need to use settings info work minutes times 60. Otherwise, we will use settings info break minutes times 60. And we can format better like this. So now we have percentage that we can use here. Let's use percentage. And let's put percentage. Let's refresh. Okay, so percentage is actually 1. It's because we forgot to times 100%. Okay, so it's 100%, but we want to see how many minutes and seconds we have left. So let's do a const minutes is seconds left divided by 60. So we can use it also here. Let's do minutes like this. So we have 45 minutes. And now let's also do seconds. Seconds is seconds left, and rest of the dividing by 60. So let's also add colon and seconds here, and also we need to do math floor on the minutes, because if it's like if the result of this is 44.8, we want 44 minutes. All right, So now we have seconds, but it's 0, and we want it to be 0, 0. So let's do it as a let. And now if seconds, if smaller than 10, then seconds is 0 plus seconds. Okay, now the problem is that it's not running. Let's see. Actually, I missed that we are creating an interval, running it, and we are directly clearing the interval. Instead, we should return a function that will clear an interval. So yeah, now it's running. To make it work faster, I can remove 1 0 from here. Okay, I think that percentage is not updating. Let's see, percentage times 100% should be here inside. Yeah, now it works. Now let's see if this will change to break mode. Yes, but the color doesn't change. So to fix it, let's see, we have path color of red, and we will change depending on the mode. If the mode is work, we want red, otherwise we want green. Yeah, it works. Okay, now let's put it to normal speed. So every second it changes. Now we want to see if settings work. So let's check settings, and let's change work time to 1 minute and break to 2 minutes. Okay, it works. Now we want to have it paused as a default. So let's do pause to true, and let's maybe put some real values here. 45, and let's do 15 here. And we want to fix display in the pause button. So let's go down to those, and let's fix formatting. And now when someone clicks play, we want to do set is paused to false, and we want to also update is paused reference current to false, and almost the same for the pause button, but the exact opposite. So when someone clicks pause button, and we will set is paused to true, and is paused reference current value will be also true. So now let's test it. So if I click play, it starts ticking, and if I click pause, it's paused. Let's change this one to 1 minute. Let's play. Yeah, it's ticking down, and if I click pause, it's paused. So yeah, now we are done. Thanks for watching, and please don't forget to click the like button and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one.